This mystery is not one that provides the query of who did it, but rather how. One particular autumn evening, 3 murders occurred, all in different locations and all by different methods. What all 3 murders had in common were that they were not committed by the same person, and they all happened at the same time of night. The cases have already been solved, a word which I use lightly because we know who did them. We just don't know how or why. How is also used not in the sense in how the murderer or murderess chose to carry out their heinous deeds, but how they each could have physically done them. Murder number 1 was committed by Gloria Dunborough of Salem, Massachusetts. Gloria is a very petite housewife, weighing only 103 pounds, with a 5'3" stature. She murdered a man much larger than her, one Stanley Burgess, architect and contractor in Chicago, Illinois. The poor man appeared to be beaten to death and then physically thrown from his staircase balcony. Murder number 2 was committed by Angeline Meyer, a 7-year-old girl from Brooklyn, New York. Angeline is a first grader and loves to paint and draw. She murdered a man, Joseph Brighton, a lawyer and father of 3, in Vancouver, BC. This man seemed to have been tortured a while before meeting his demise. He was found with deep slash marks all over his body, burn marks on his face, and oh, did I mention he was hung? Murder number 3 was committed by Burl Forsyth, a feeble elderly man from Jacksonville, Florida. Burl's wife and adult children were forced to leave their loved one in a nursing home 5 years ago due to his stroke. He murdered Joanna Markson, a self-employed florist in Boise, Idaho. She was found with cuts and bruises all over her body. She had internal injuries resembling those of someone who had been thrown out a window. Her final cause of death, strangulation. As I said before, all 3 murders happened in different locations, in different ways, and all at the same time. What I did not yet mention is that all these murders happened while each murderer was asleep. Each have alibis to prove it. Gloria was staying with her sister. She fell asleep in the living room at 12:45 a.m. Her sister covered her with a blanket and made tea. Angeline's parents let her stay up late because it was her birthday, but she was tuckered out and her father carried her up to bed at 12:45 a.m. Burl was wheeled out into the common room to watch a late-night movie. His nurse came to get him, gave him his medication, and took him to his room. He was asleep by 12:45 a.m. Each murder took place at 1:05 a.m. Each murderer was asleep at the time of their crimes. So the questions remain. How did a tiny housewife beat to death a large man and throw him off a balcony? How did a small child maliciously torture and hang a man? And how did a stroke victim with no use of his limbs throw a woman through a window and strangle her? These questions have yet to be answered, but there is one more thing in common connecting the 3 murderers. They all fell asleep with the same book next to them. Is this a bizarre, unsolvable mystery? Was there something in the book that made them do it? But how and why? Perhaps this is one for you to decide. Perhaps you can tell us how each did this, how and why. Or perhaps you already know. After all, you should. You just read the book.